Greetings, YouTube. Something is raiding Farmer Johnson's farm. But what? The players seek out to investigate. A series of raids have taken place against a number of farms. Father Johnson is the latest victim. So far, the things that have been stolen have been minor. Some portable equipment, axes, hammers, mauls, rakes, hoes, things like that, and animals. As well as it appears that some vegetable stores of some variety have also been stolen. So far, no one has been attacked, but these raids do exist, and people are concerned that eventually, if they catch the raider, there's going to be a conflict. So the players have been asked to look into this particular situation. Obviously, this is a low-level adventure idea. So the players find the latest victim. They search his property and they find a trail. They follow the trail back to some foothills and an outcropping, which leads them to an opening, a small cave. It's new. This is not an opening in the ground that existed a long time ago. This is new. They can tell it's new. And the construction wasn't done on the surface. So, the player characters proceeded to investigate. They begin to look inside the cave, search around, realize that it is in fact someone taking advantage of a natural cavernous space that did exist, unknown to the people living in the area. And they have just simply used it as an exit that lets them have access to the world outside. As they get deeper into this particular complex, they find themselves facing a very narrow spot. It's not quite a complete squeeze point for a medium-sized person, but it's close to a squeeze point for a medium-sized person. A small-sized person could fit through it very simply. So they send someone through, who is promptly met with a barrage of quartz spheres. They're about an inch in diameter. And they're made out of quartz, natural quartz. They're not crystal clear or anything, they're made out of natural quartz. Just a hail of these things. And it drives them back. They simply cannot take the amount of ammo being chucked their way. And they were able to scavenge some of the spheres to take back with them to look at. And they discovered that the spheres have an unusual shape. They're perfectly round. And each has got 6 little points on it that have been filed off. So this round object that was attached to something else at that point, and then that point was filed down so that the object would be perfectly round with these little 6 points on it. And the points are diametrically opposed. So, like the sides of a die. 6 of them. The players never figured out why the spheres had these little points. I had to explain it to them later, as I will explain to you. You see, if you take a stone-shaped spell, it allows complex structures to be made out of stone. But it doesn't allow moving parts. And it only allows a structure of a particular size. So someone casts this on a stone, and they want to make ammo for slings. They craft a matrix of spheres, each attached to the sphere next to it at that point. So you end up with this almost like a molecular model. All these little spheres connect to each other. You then break them apart and polish off the points. You've got perfectly round spheres made out of stone that are relatively simple to make. Obviously you need a stone-shaped spell, but you get the point. It's a whole lot easier than polishing rocks by hand into spheres. So player characters are given a conundrum. How do they get further into this passage when that squeeze point makes them the perfect target to be just wiped out with sling ammo? What do they do? they come someone forward, and then they start talking in the direction of where the sling stones are coming from. And they get a reply. It's not in the language they speak, but they get a reply. Okay, there is someone out there that is willing to at least exchange words. They talk some more, and eventually they get a reply they sort of understand. It's a voice that speaks common, though it's incredibly garbled common, but it's common nonetheless. Heavy accent, missing every fifth or sixth word, but it's common. The common speaker eventually moves forward. He's got a shield, a stone weapon in his hand, and it's a goblin. Alright, so, everyone knows goblins are evil, right? Well, not in my world. So they have to talk. And over the exchange they have, they discover that the goblins are here because they were driven out of their traditional region by flooding. And the flooding was caused by someone screwing up and blocking off a drain. And they need to unblock the drain, but none of the goblins will do it because the water that is now covering the drain is infested with albino eels. And if the albino eels attack you, they bite you, they will steal your soul. And this is a major cultural taboo amongst the goblins. If you die having had your soul stolen by one of these eels, you'll be in limbo forever. You'll never go on to your just reward. And the player characters listen to this, they move forward, they interact with the goblins. They discover that not only the goblins have a functioning society, that they also have sense of humor, that they have traditions where the player characters are taken aghast at this, but they are cannibals. They eat their own dead. They take the bones and inter them into clay in sort of a stylized statue of the person that was when they were alive, and they move them from place to place as their tribes go from location to location. So the honored dead are taken with them, and those that aren't are now considered honored dead. So they're literally carrying their ancestors with them, for good or ill. And the player characters realize that they're going to have to get that blockage out. If they can get that blockage out, drain the water again, the goblins will be able to go back to their traditional areas once they've been recovered, obviously, and they will no longer raid the surface. But they discover something in the process. Goblins have an incredibly high level of skill when it comes to stone and metal. A skill that rivals that of the dwarves. Now, this metal making tools that the goblins had, for the most part, had to be abandoned because there simply wasn't enough time to take an entire forge with you when suddenly the floodwaters just took over. But if they can get the goblins back in their traditional areas, can get the area, up and running, and they can set up some trade, they could have access to high-grade stone and metal implements that no one else in the area is going to have access to. So the player characters get some underwater breathing spells. They are given some light sources, ever-burning torches, which will work underwater. And in fact, when they first introduce it, one of the liaison of the goblins, the only one that speaks any kind of common, calls out to one of the characters and chucks a torch at him. The player character screams as this goblin chucks a torch at him. The goblin that reaches over picks up the torch by the head, because it's an ever-burning torch and doesn't hurt him at all. Hands it to the player character and goes, "Joke never get old." And then they go in to these waters to go get the blockage undone. And they take some blasting, essentially blasting powder with them, smoke powder, the gaming world version of gunpowder, and which will function underwater. And in the process, they have to do battle with numerous eels because they don't want their souls stolen either. So they go on there, they open up, they blow up the blockage, water begins to flow properly. The blockage was natural, it wasn't evil. Some stone moved, blocked off, and suddenly they had flooding. So they block that, boom, water goes down. Goblins can go back to their traditional areas, but now they've got established trade routes with the surface. They get things from the surface they can't have. Goblins now establish that now establish trade with the surface with stone and metal tools that the surface didn't have before. Some of them artistically very good, and all of them high quality and useful utilitarian items, even if they aren't always artistically attractive. They have a very pragmatic utilitarian style for the most part. Also very common to what things are in the dwarven culture. The eels, they were just albino eels. Being bitten one by one was no danger other than the fact that an eel bit you. Think of them as moray eels. No stolen souls. But the goblins believed it. And the player characters did too. Because all of the goblins believed it. And they bought the myth. They bought the legend. Because I sold it to them. Now, here you have an example of how to have a race of evil creatures that aren't evil. Because there are no evil races in my world. Everything has the potential for redemption. Everything has the potential for moral good and evil. That's how I run things. And in the end, the player characters established a trade route, made new acquaintances, if not necessarily friends, and didn't have to murder an entire population of evil people, because they weren't evil. They were just trying to make it through the day. And the player characters helped them arrange a way to do that didn't involve breaking the law. That's justice. That's how I do it in my games. And that's how I prefer to see it done in the real world.